Welcome to the Bright Ideas Podcast.
Scribe Media, in your own words, why did you create it and what does it do?
Well, I had a bunch of entrepreneurs who asked me or told me I want to write a book, and then I would tell them how to write a book, and they're like, I don't want to do that. So can you do it for me? And I was like, no, because it used to be that you had to hire a ghostwriter, and they would kind of write a book that was their version of your words. And so this one woman eventually was like, no, I want you to get my ideas out of my head and my words and my voice, but I don't want to have to do any of the rest of the work. And I was like, oh, of course, like a scribe would. And so, like Plato wrote down all of Socrates' stuff, right? And so I kind of figured the process out with her, and I didn't think it was going to work, but it ended up working really well. And she referred, like, I'm such an idiot. I finished the book with her, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, she paid me, and it was like just a fun project for me. And she's like, what do you want me to tell my friends that you charge? And I'm like, charge for what? She's like, the same service. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this again. Like, no, that's terrible. Like, it was one time is fine for me. And she's like, okay, I'll just tell them you charge what you charged me. And so she started sending people to me, and I was like, I had a guy who I was working with on something else. I'm like, do you want to do this stuff? And he's like, yeah. And so he started doing the projects and sharing the money with me. And then, like, I talked about it on a podcast, and we got like 10 people sign up. And he goes, dude, we've done $250,000 in sales the last 3 months. I think you have a business here. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you might be right. And so now we're like 6 years later, and we have like 260 employees, and like we've done 737 books, I think, that have almost 200,000 reviews total on Amazon amongst them, including like the best-selling memoir, the second best-selling memoir of the last decade, other than Michelle Obama's, David Goggins, and a bunch of others. And it all started because like this woman was like, get my book out of my head.
Yeah. Nice work, man. And you don't even work there anymore, do you?
Not really. No, it's the greatest situation ever. No, man, I kept hiring people to do my job that were better than me. A lot of mistakes on the way early, but now pretty much everyone there who's doing things I used to do is better than me at it, including the CEO. We have a professional CEO who runs the company who's an absolute badass and does. It's so funny because he doesn't know. He'll tell you this. He doesn't know an adverb from a pronoun, and he runs a publishing company and does a 10 times better job. Actually, more. I can tell you exactly how much better. It would be 20x better because that's how much more sales we do with him leading the company than with me. What I was. Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to talk about in this interview, because when you and I met down in Austin not too terribly long ago, you gave a talk about this, and I got pretty fascinated with it because I'm a big fan of trying to fire myself from as much stuff as I can as well. Tried that recently, and actually I had a big failure, which cost me a bunch of money, so obviously I need to learn some things here. It was a senior hire, and it didn't go very well. So let's have you and or me and the audience learn, hopefully, from what you've been able to do. So let's start with this. Why do you think it's so important to bring in really experienced leaders, and what gap are they filling that you were struggling to fill on your own?
Well, so it's important to bring them in. Just if you're an entrepreneur, your job is to find inefficiencies in the market, places where people need things and businesses aren't satisfying their need, and then figure out a way to satisfy that need better than is being met now. Or either meet it at all if it's not being met at all, or meet it better than the current set of offerings. If you're good at that, you're probably not good at all of the other skills of running a business, but you might be, right? I know some people who are great entrepreneurs who are also great ops people, right? But if you're a great entrepreneur, I believe you should spend all your time. I don't think entrepreneuring is a word, but you should spend all your time.
Say entrepreneuring.
Right. You should spend all your time doing entrepreneurial work because that is the highest value work to society, right? Whereas like it's much easier to find people that can take an established role and either do it better than you or improve it or whatever than it is to set up a company, so to speak, right? Like it's much harder to find people who can come up with ideas and push them into existence than it is people who can run those ideas once they're established and scale them. Now, I think they're genuinely different skill sets. And if you can be an entrepreneur, you probably should, because I don't want to say that's the hardest thing. It's just right now it's the rarest thing. I could imagine a situation reversed where everyone was coming up with ideas and no one could scale them, and the people who could scale them would make the most money. And they do make a lot. My CEO owns a big chunk of my company because he's amazing and he can scale a company. But I feel like it's sort of, if you try and do everything, you're usually going to do most things poorly. But if you focus on the things you love and you're good at, then you're probably going to be a lot happier and you're going to be a lot more successful. And that's been the case for me.
So let's back up a tiny bit then. So you started the company kind of by accident. Referrals led you to, that first $250,000 in sales in the first 3 months. And I would assume that you were the CEO until you hired this fellow that you've hired. How far did you, in terms of revenue, because it's easy to understand, how far did you take it to? What was the annual revenue when you basically fired yourself? And then
I think we got to $1.5 million in the second year.
Okay.
Something like that. Maybe $2 million, something.
And that was at the point where you decided, I'm not the best person for this role anymore, because now it's more about scaling and operations than it is about entrepreneuring, this new word that you and I have just invented. Have I got that right?
Yeah. When you get a go-kart and you get it above like the speed it's supposed to go and it starts shimmying and the wheels come off?
Yeah.
That's what happened with our company, is that like I built a go-kart and it was great. And then we got it going way too fast and the wheels came off. Yeah. So we had to bring in a real engineer. Okay. Yeah.
So for another founder or founders that are listening to this right now and they're thinking, yeah, my go-kart's wobbling like crazy, but I really don't know what the first step is to find a new captain of the go-kart. Talk us through that. I mean, did the way you did it, did you luck out, or was it replicable to a certain degree?
Both. So there was definitely an element of luck, but I think there's an element of luck and chance in almost everything that happens. So what did I do that was replicable? Well, the first thing I had to do was recognize that I was not the person to lead this company, that I was failing at that job, right? And not even failing. I just wasn't doing as good as someone else could do, right? Like you might be doing okay. I see a lot of companies where the founder, the entrepreneur, is still the CEO and they're like 5 million or 10 million or 20 million. They're doing okay. But if they had a baller CEO who knew how to scale a company, they'd be double, triple, or 10x that, right? And so like that's the first thing, is admitting to yourself, I'm not the best person for this.
I want to jump in and interrupt you there for a minute, because I think that in itself is something that's really hard for people to do. Did you have a feeling that was like weighing you down, or was there repetitive bits of evidence where you're like, oh man, screwed that up. Oh man, screwed that up. Like what made that light? Because there's so much ego involved, and you talked a lot about this when you're on stage. There's so much ego involved in being a founder and the CEO and the leader and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And you were able to say, it's not, maybe I'm not the best guy.
Yeah, because the CEO is such a sexy position, right? You're in charge, you're the leader. And like a lot of people assume, well, if I started it, I have to be the one to lead it. I've got to have the sexy position. And I definitely fell into that trap. But the thing here, it just became, honestly, man, there were two major things. One was I really didn't like my life on a day-to-day basis. I was always angry, stressed, and frustrated. And that's not like that's not how I wanted to live my life. It's not super enjoyable. And so like I knew, when your life is always like in a stressful, frustrated, angry position, probably something's off, right? And so because I was spending all my time doing things that I didn't know how to do or I didn't like doing. I like starting things and being creative and all that kind of stuff. I don't like managing things or managing people. Some people love that. I just don't. And so I kind of had to realize that. I just suffer and realize I was suffering. And my wife had to be like, why are you such an asshole all the time? You're not the dude I married. And I'm like, yeah, I know that guy didn't have a company he was trying to run. And so there was that aspect.
Yeah.
And then honestly, I kind of had to step back and ask myself, I met him, right? And I realized, fuck, man, this is what a baller CEO looks like. And this is how he acts. And this is what he knows. And I'm just not in that category. And it's okay. It's just not who I am. And so then I had to ask myself, like, well, why am I doing this? Is this company about the mission that we purport to serve, which is helping people write and publish their books to share their knowledge and wisdom with the world? Or is it about making me look good? Mm-hmm. It could be about making me look good. And if it is, then I should stay the CEO, and I should, because, I could hire CEO coaches and I could learn this, and I could maybe just hire an ops person, and like I still say CEO and all that kind of stuff. Because if it's about me looking good, that's what I should do. Mm-hmm. But if it's about the purpose, if it's about serving the people we're serving and then serving the mission, then I needed to get out of the way. And I need to be in the role where I did the best work and was the most useful to the company, and let him be in the role where he was the most useful, which was running it. And once I framed the question that way, it became so obvious to me that, like, of course I've got to get out of this role and get someone else in. So I did.